Edge Radio Australia, of course, it is time for Freedom Fridays in association with Pod TV. I've got Derek to my left, mate. Great to see you.
Good to see you as
always.
Very
good. Over there, of course, we've got Travis. Well, he's just run off.
Ran off.
A very positive thing.
I think he's
let me tell you.
I think he's going to a protest.
I think he is. He's got a wardrobe malfunction going on there, and now everything's back in place. Fantastic. Good to see you there, Travis.
I had to get Nana's tea cozy. I mean, beanie.
Fantastic, mate. And all the way from Utah.
I was feeling unloved because, like, you've got your what do you call it? The hat. What's that?
It's a fedora, mate. It's a fedora.
What? It's a hat. So
okay.
You've got your funky hat, so I had to get Nana's funky hat.
All right.
We need Derek to have a funky hat.
Dan, I don't know about you, but I'm feeling left out here. Do we need a hat stand?
I think we need to do this. Let's jump into the show. Dan, great to have you all the way there from the US in Utah, mate. How's the weather over there right now?
It's all right.
It's all right? Okay, it's very mild because it's been in the 40s here. Now, what's the 40s in Fahrenheit? Probably, 110?
Yeah.
Yeah, there we go. So it's been a bit warm around here.
36 is 100.
Oh, okay.
So
we've been cold, colder with some moisture coming up, but it's beginning to mild out more.
Well, I'll tell you another place it's heating up, and that's Europe right now. No, Europe is heating up right now.
Oh, yeah.
What's going on? The hottest place in the world.
That is fantastic.
So that's where I grew up. So it's
right now we're not doing a weather report. We're jumping in Freedom Fridays. So let's do exactly that. Right now, what we've got going on in Europe is just something we have to talk about. We've got to talk about the backlash of from our farmers and so forth. Right across Europe, many countries, Dirk. Let's get into it.
There are a lot of ticked off farmers in Europe at the moment, and they're not just ticked off for one reason. It varies from country to country, which I think is important to understand here. We can't just lump the EU.
Well, I think that gives you a good idea, though.
Yeah, so we can see pictures and images here. This is France, I believe, where they've had mass movement of trucks down their highways and freeways and just blocking and causing blockades, taking it right up to the government, sending a message to Macron, hey, we are not happy.
That goes for kilometres, that.
Yeah, it does. I'm so impressed with the way the French have actually resisted, and I'm not making the joke here. I really mean this.
Well, normally they're really good at retreating.
We love to pull the joke about the white flag when it comes to the French, but I'm telling you right now, they're doing a great job. They really are stepping up and standing up to this, total,
bullshit. Let's be honest, it's bullshit.
I'm falling out of my words. Yes, we'll go with that. Nice.
Yeah. No, literally, because there's a scene later where it involves a lot of bullshit.
Okay, we'll deal with that one when we get there. All right, Derek, let's talk about let's talk about different countries.
Let's have a look at the countries across Europe. We've seen the stuff going on in the Netherlands for some months. Belgium has now risen up as well, which is really interesting because, of course, Davos is in Belgium.
Good point.
And that's fascinating, of course, with the World Economic Forum agenda, you shall eat bugs. Greece, Poland, they all have one point in common. They're just not happy with the movement triggered by concerns over low wages, heavy regulation, cheap imports. And this has also involved farmers from Spain, Italy, Romania, bless you, and Greece calling for action. It's even, getting off to the lines of tractors in Residential Street in Poland, the German bridge. Farmers are protesting Italy, burned a spectacular nighttime fires by stone statues. On the Dutch-Belgian border and roads in Greece, they've blocked roads in Poland. They were hatched plans to shut border crossings with Ukraine as European protests over costs and bureaucracy spread. The French farmers are starting to lift their roadblocks around Paris now. They've been really protesting in-house over the week. So we look at more footage of what's been going on.
I'll see if I can pull up one of the... Because the thing is, like, the police have, I don't want to say they've been very heavy-handed in this one. They're not. Like, they're attending these things, but if you look at the comparison to the protests that we had in WA, like for COVID and all that, and how heavy-handed the police were versus, I'll just find the video now for you.
Okay.
It's really interesting to see the difference in the way they treated the farmers in this versus the way they did during COVID. So,
okay. Funny enough, I put a video up on my socials today about 2 years ago today when my partner and I were repeatedly being breath tested. There you go.
So here's a video of farmers. Apparently that was a police blockade. I think this one's actually in Germany.
Right.
It's in the EU somewhere, but you can actually see like there's a lot of police. You can't really see them; they're behind the farmers, but the trucks are just.
Pushing
The police are set up on the road, so that these are farmers. Like they're used to going off road, so they're just like, whatever, and they're just going straight around the police. Like they just don't care.
Yeah, look, the tractor doesn't need tarmac. Let's face it.
Yeah, and the other thing is the police aren't chasing them. Like, what's the police car going to do with a truck like that? It will just park on top of it.
The French government has offered those farmers more than 400 million euros in measures meant to answer their grievances over low earnings, heavy regulation, and unfair competition from abroad. So they've kind of starting to lift their roadblocks, and on major highways around Paris, they've taken down tents, cleaning up the road. They set fire to straw bales that were used as barricades. So they're starting to retreat there. Romania's coalition government said on Friday it reached an agreement with their farmers and hauliers to end protests that have been happening for weeks against high business costs. They started about 3 weeks ago. Convoys of tractors and trucks are moving. In Germany, the real protest and grief has been about phasing out tax breaks on agricultural diesel to balance the budget. That's been very much a fuel-based type thing. And what you've got to remember in this, of course, is the Russian-Ukrainian incident has been blamed for a lot of costs, not only to energy with gas, and I'm not so sure that the farmers are influenced by the gas, but it's more to do also with, of course, fertilizer.
Sure.
Of course, that directly affects them. Of course, there is the energy cost, fertilizer and transport. That's risen in many EU companies since February of 2022.
Well, to me, I think their biggest, and
Just before we do that one, I do have that video with the fires, but I don't know why it always plays the volume immediately. So here we go. So I've got the footage. Turn the volume off.
Now, this was outside the EU headquarters, I believe.
Yeah.
They took it right up to the
actual building itself.
As they need
So
to.
obviously they didn't burn the building. There's a whole heap of, if you keep watching it.
They're hay bales, aren't they?
Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely. They're making a statement.
And
right?
I've seen
you see
video
the
footage
fires there.
too of videos inside the EU building looking out on the farmers as well in terms of perspective.
So
look, I think they're peaceful protests. I mean, I think they're far more peaceful than what we saw a couple of years ago with the rioting that took place in America that the left wing media absolutely covered
I
up.
just love there's a building on fire and there's like people stealing shit and the
Mostly peaceful protests.
protests.
What a joke.
Yeah. Well, Dan, what's your thought about mostly peaceful protests?
Well, January 6th was mostly a peaceful protest compared to the violence in the street and the robbing and everything else that took place around the country caused by the Democratic operatives and their funders. They had placed rocks in place. Everything was in place. So they had major funding behind them. And it was all intended to create massive violence to encourage people to vote against Donald Trump. And, they did everything that they could. Now they're playing lawfare, to do everything they can to stop Trump, keep him off the ballot, whatever they can to disrupt his election cycle and attending rallies and getting the word out. Meanwhile, Joe Biden hides in bunkers and comes out and makes statements and tries to make himself look like that he's doing meaningful stuff when he started a number of wars and continues to create disruptive illegal behavior in the United States and destroy our economy and destroy our freedom and liberty. So
Kind of to the point, what we're seeing in the US is what we're seeing across the world, right? I mean,
it's all part of the globalist agenda.
Yeah, exactly. Look, Biden is just a puppet. We all know that. And anybody who thinks that man's running the free world, look, I've got a lovely grey bridge in Sydney I'd love to sell you.
Yeah,
right?
we belovedly call Mr. McFeely.
Well, it's interesting, Dan, you bring up the whole American politics. It was interesting to see Trump never wasting an opportunity. He was out there hanging out with the farmers over the weekend and autographing their tractors and this sort of stuff and saying, I'd like to see Biden try to do that. Never missing an opportunity. What I think is really interesting here too is the strong relationship that America has historically had with the French in, of course, the Louisiana Purchase, the whole foundation of the nation, which, of course, the United States was originally an agricultural.
Well, of course it was.
I mean, you settle a land, you've got
Yeah.
to grow food. That's
right.
your first priority. And, of course, Thanksgiving has come out of that, the traditional holiday of that. So there's such a strong link in the United States to the land and agriculture. What are your thoughts on that, Dan?
Well, the corporate interests are starting to take over the land and buy the farmers out. Foreign governments are buying farming land. The likes of Gates and Bezos and the rest of them are buying farming land. So the agricultural underpinnings of the United States are quickly being eroded by the corporate power structures in the United States and foreign powers. China owns lots of farmland. And then, unbeknownst to most folks, the Native Americans own hundreds of millions of acres of land in the country, in the United States. And, and that's basically tied up and worthless to the rest of us. So, and there's more land grabbing going on by the federal government and declaring areas, parks and other things. Biden's been Bears Ears, other things, expanded it after Trump contracted it, made it smaller. And there's just been tug of war between, and I mean, we're fighting for our life over here because of these politicians. And, I just, the problem is that both, truthfully, both Trump and Biden really belong in prison, right? So it's like they both should go there. And so you got to pick which crook so Biden is a publicly corrupt individual that's been selling his name and brand around the world and has been basically a traitor to the United States of America. Trump's stuff is all his personal business and such. And so who would you rather trust? A businessman that might have a few blind eyes here and there, or an idiot politician that's been there forever and is personally corrupt and has hundreds of millions of dollars in assets squirreled away in multi corporations from all over the world, and gets payola from the Chinese and the Ukrainians and everybody else. I mean, Biden is the most corrupt president.
Biden's middle name should be LLC. Let's face it, he's got that much money hidden away. It's ridiculous.
And it's ballsy for him to think he can get away with it. Of course, he had the Clinton example that the Clintons got away with it. Obama's got away with it. Bush has got away with it. So he thought he could get away with it. Why not, right? And it's because, Romney and others have gotten away with it. Of course, Romney was in that kind of business before he got into politics, corporate takeovers and everything else, corruption around all that. So, I don't have a lot of hope for our political system right now because the crooks are running it. K Street is making the laws. The congressmen are sitting on their iPhones doing nothing really productive. Their staffs are doing everything. The administrative state is running everything. The CIA is plotting everything. The military's all turned woke and is practically worthless now compared to what it used to be like. So, that's the way it is all around the world because these people are trying to disrupt the freedom and liberty of people worldwide. So,
the thing is, and I want to look at this in a worldwide perspective here because we are seeing this happen in so many countries, and we're seeing right there with that footage with lots of stories that are sneaking through. Because let's face it, the mainstream media is doing everything. They are a corporate entity. They are the corporate media. They're doing everything in their power to sell a narrative. They sell propaganda. They don't sell news.
Well,
right?
Look who controls them. Look who controls them.
Yeah,
it's
absolutely.
A handful of oligarchs that control the media around the world.
They do, but this stuff is starting to get out right now. What I'm really loving the fact that the Europeans are stepping up with this, and countries that I would have considered to be a little bit more conservative are stepping up. Belgium, and who thinks about Belgium?
That's
As
the
far
thing
as
of chocolate with Belgium.
there you go. So
There you go. Yeah.
Well, even though
It's funny because you're the race car driver, but you're fat. But I think of chocolate. I'm skinny.
well, you're talking about media, right?
Yep.
The Swiss are now protesting against the media.
The Swiss.
right? There's not the farmers, but this is the Swiss, and they're always neutral on things. So great watches
It's
and you know what they produce.
And
But
knives. So.
I'd like to get back to the US in a moment. Just focusing on Europe in the for the moment here. I think what we've got to realize. I mean, Netherlands particularly was the big bread bowl of Europe. It's huge, right? And its control over that. We've seen that historically, and Dan raised a good point on the historical significance of this. Particularly in European history, you'd see the landowners and the aristocrats own the land, and the serfs would then serve them.
Correct.
Right? That's where the wealth was, particularly in agricultural society. With the industrialization of society, we've moved away from that somewhat. But again, they're the ones who put the food on the table.
I saw a really interesting video about this on YouTube where they were talking about what was considered wealthy going through time. So when it first started, when you had the serfs and all that, the people who owned the land were considered wealthy. Then it sort of like moved away from that, where it started going into intangible things. But they're saying now a lot of to determine like GDP for countries, stuff like that, they're starting to bring economic planning to bringing the farmland back into the control of the governments or like major corporations. So they're starting to look at land again as a source of wealth.
right.
So for a long time, they took it out of the equation.
Well, and there's a reason for that because everything else is fiat. It's fake.
yeah,
It's paper money. It doesn't mean anything, and the only really thing that matters are tangible assets. The only thing that you can get your arms around and own are the only things that really matter. Cash is worthless anymore.
And I think what you've got to also realize too is land includes waterways, land
Yes.
includes rivers, and also underground water. And
So-
I think that's going to be a very precious commodity.
And
moving
mineral
forward.
rights.
Ooh.
Additionally, land allows you to capture and harvest that water as well. And so
okay. Well,
It
on
goes
that
further
point,
as well because you got to remember Luan's Vietnamese. So Luan's my wife. So for 20 or 30 years now, the Vietnamese government, the Philippine government, and I think it's the Cambodian government
Right.
have been in an international court battle against China. Have you heard of the term the bull's tongue?
yes.
So what happens is China is building all these little islands going down the coast of Vietnam and the Philippines and claiming because that's international waters, it's all our waters now because we've got land there. So what's happening is there's been this massive grab for land for a long time. Now, it's really interesting because talking about the food side of things, you can see that marrying up and happening in Australia as well. WA government's just tried to give away 8% of WA to the Aboriginal organisations. There was the Aboriginal Land Heritage Act that they were trying to do as well. All the other different regulations and everything that's going on. And I think the government's saying to realise, hang on, this may not be the right way to go because I've just removed a lot of the planning and requirements for building granny flats.
Yes.
Because we've got such a major housing crisis at the moment. So food is paramount.
Look,
Anyway.
let's cut the crap, okay? Land is power, right? In very basic terms, because if you've got land, you've got control of the food supply and the water supply. Now, no matter who you are, no matter what your job is, no matter how much money you have, no matter the color of your skin or the gender or the whatever you've got, right? Okay, you need food and you need water. And if you can control those two, you control the population. And to me, this is ultimately about control.
Power.
We've also got to look at this too. Is that it's not just the police versus the people, and we've got some really interesting footage that kind of demonstrate the humanity of what's.
Oh, yeah.
Are we
occurring.
doing the humanity or the other one first?
All right, we'll do the other
We'll
one.
do
first.
the other one first.
I'll do the other ones first. Show me what.
Show me that side of humanity.
So this is more to show there it is how pissed off people are getting, and let's go
This
back
is
then.
this is footage of manure being sprayed at a police vehicle. Is it?
It is.
Now, how many people have wanted to dump like hundreds of thousands of liters of shit on top of a
there
police car?
Weekly.
There was also I can't remember which country it was in, but there were farmers that were dumping manure on supermarkets. Aldi was one that was targeted in Europe. I think it was France, and there's just manure and
Into doorways of government buildings.
feces just get flying through the doors.
I think it was
It
you that-
happens. It happens.
Yes. I
Yeah.
think you sent me one video as well where they were hanging up a dead boar in a tree
Yes.
outside of one of the parliament buildings as well. So the people are angry. Like they're really, and the thing I want to just bring, I forgot to bring this up earlier, is everything that's going on and all those reasons why people are complaining and protesting and all that. It all comes down to cost of living. It's making it impossible for farmers to actually earn enough money to pay for their own cost of living.
Well, it's more than that,
profit.
because this started in the Netherlands a couple of years ago when the Dutch government was wanting to take the land, get the farmers off the land,
Correct.
take away the
Well, that's
land.
their living.
Yes, exactly.
So take that land
And
away, how are they going to pay to live?
And that land has been in some hands for centuries,
course it
families for
has.
centuries, and they're trying to take that away. So we've got to keep that in context too. And I think farmers had that in the back of their mind as they're going through this and going, you're going to make it harder for me to do this, harder to feed our families when we're putting bread on your table. No, back off, give us our rights. And it's very, very powerful. Have you got any more footage?
I have,
Before we
and
show
it
that
is the last one I've got now.
Let's do that.
There's so much footage there. We're just cherry picking a few out this
The irony of this video, well, let's play it first and then we'll talk about it.
And it's actually the cake that he's unwrapping for the farmers. Because you got to remember, these guys have been protesting out in the weather for a long time, so they're probably cold and hungry and all that
It's
sort of
winter
stuff.
over there at the moment.
So, you know, it's actually an olive green.
Well, the
Yes.
irony of it is these farmers really quite a Christmas cake.
It's a really good point.
Right? So they produced it. Symbolic. Brewing guys produced it. We're not wanting to fight you here. Can we resolve it? Type of thing. And I think that's a big statement to these politicians who I won't go there.
I don't
won't go there.
blame the police officers. They're in a really tough spot because they've got to feed their families. So, and I guarantee you, if they say, "No, we're not going to," and you notice that the farmer put it in the rubbish bin.
I did notice that. Yeah.
Okay,
There's
so
respect there.
you go to any of those greeny protest rallies and all that sort of stuff. You go there the next day and the rubbish is spewed
Disgusting,
everywhere.
yeah.
And they're supposed to be Green supporters. The thing that I'm
Well,
noticing,
the farmers have respect for the land.
Yeah,
spot on,
exactly.
because they
And
know
they
if
want-
they trash the land, they're not don't have any produce. They got no produce. They've got no money. They can't survive. So I think when you boil it right down to the basic figures on it, it is still a cost of living, whether it's earning the money to be able to survive or the fees, charges, regulations, the cost of fuel, transport, gas charges. There's a whole heap of things going on around the world. They've got no control over a lot of this sort of stuff, but they're making them pay for it. And as the primary producer, the buck stops with them on everything. They're the one that bores the cost of everything. And they got all these middle companies like Woolworths in Australia who they are giving the farmers $4 a kilo for meat, and then they're selling it for $34 a kilo.
It's price gouging.
So I wouldn't quite go price gouging because they do process the meat to put onto the shelf, but they're making record profits.
The Woolies here in Australia is making greater profits than the supermarkets are in Europe. It's right up there. And you've got to look at the profit lines and graphs where they how they did over COVID, where people were doing a lot of. I think the advantage, at least in Australia, that Woolies and Coles had over the bigger chains is they did delivery to the door. Right? Or pick up and go. And I think that's where a lot of their profits came in. People were ordering online because they were in lockdown. They couldn't do that. But those profits haven't tapered off. They've continued to rise. Even when fuel prices have come down, they've maintained, let's keep our prices up at inflation levels.
Sure.
And that's where you're getting now government investigating and price gouging, all this sort of stuff. What we need is in that duality of Woolies and Coles. We just need more competition in this market.
We do. I mean, look, it's a hard one for me. You know, the capitalist part of me wants more competition, wants less regulation, and wants the supply and demand to find the price. But the problem is here, what we've got right now is two big players, but particularly Coles and Woolies, right, who are controlling supply so much and just basically
No. They're not just controlling supply. So Coles is a nasty, nasty company.
right.
So back when I used to do mortgages, I got to see what properties were being sold and what companies were owning them and all that sort of stuff. So one of the real estate agents was talking to me. I said, how come you keep selling commercial properties when you're a residential person? So he was telling me what happens is there's certain companies, and Coles is one of them. Whenever like Audi or the reason Audi never came to WA for a long time is every time Audi has a scene where they'll buy the building that they're in. So it just keeps the cost down because they're not constantly shelling out rent.
Sure.
So what happened is every time Audi went to go buy a block of land or an apartment or something like that, or a complex to build a shop, the real estate agent knew Coles would buy at a higher price. So he goes, contacts Coles. Coles would then go buy the property for a much higher price so Audi couldn't build
You're
it. So,
kidding
no,
me.
deadly serious.
Well, that's anti-competition as far as I'm concerned. That's,
Yeah, it
that's
should be
weird.
illegal.
I don't think it's anti-competition.
I do.
It's business.
No, okay,
It's
this
great.
business.
Yeah.
Business
Yeah, but it's
great.
intentional interference. It's fraudulent.
happened to ethics.
No, but the person who's wrong in the wrong here is also the real estate agent.
Of course.
Right?
Correct.
Because they're going,
So
I'll
he
get a
should be
higher commission if I go
disclosing-
there.
He should be disclosing that he's got a conflict of interest. So it's
Yeah.
not Coles. They're just using the system that's in the place.
Well, yeah, it is Coles. They're targeting. It's both. It's both parties. Let's face it.
Yeah.
If
So
that, if you
the
can
Audi is still
substantiate
here. So Audi had the option of, instead of buying the land, they could have just gone and rented a place first,
Sure.
leased it, owned it, then communicated directly with the owner and said, you know what, I'm going to buy this off you now.
Yeah.
We're already here. And they could have worked around the system. So again, I don't blame Coles or the real estate guy for this one, because that's the system that they're in. I blame the system for allowing
No.
it to happen.
I disagree. I think that ultimately, you know, I'm all for people
What
making,
allows them to do it?
look, I'm all for people making money. I'm all for people having success, right?
Yep.
But you have to, well, in my mind, you have to do it ethically, right? And I don't think that's ethically, right?
Whether
Okay?
it's ethical or not, it is legal.
legal,
they're
yes,
allowed
yes,
to do
I
it.
know. But what's
So,
legal and what's moral?
At what
Let's
point
face
does the
it.
government have to step in to stop that sort of stuff?
I watch the government
So,
doing immoral
well-
things constantly, right?
Yeah.
But legally,
Yeah.
morality
So
is
it
important.
But
comes
what you're
down
not
to-
considering here is the seller. The
Right.
seller's going to want the highest price they
Of
can
course.
for their
Right.
land, right?
So is
what
the
are they
seller
going to
in
do?
the wrong?
They're supposed to miss out. Well, somebody else has offered me another, 20% more than
Yeah.
what you have. I mean, come on, what are you going to do? You're going to.
It's very interesting.
As someone who's selling my own personal units at the moment,
Yep.
if I had, say, a family of four wanting to buy the house and they could only afford, so it's on the market for 435 at the moment. Let's say they come around and say, oh, we've got 380. So should I drop down to 380 or should I sell to someone who's got the 420?
Okay.
You sell to someone who's got the 420.
Okay,
It's
he-
obvious
right.
because
Well,
you go,
That's the price.
something else. That's what the
Even
market.
if it's a massive superannuation fund who's
Sure.
just buying it for investment purposes and they're doing jacks around for
unless
$400 a week.
of course there's a humanitarian cause which you feel drawn to help
To-
that family out, right? I mean, yeah, but it's going
So-
to be a win-win for everyone.
So let me ask you a question then. So if I don't help this family out, am I the monster for not helping a family instead of chasing the dollar?
You're not a monster,
No.
but you're not a nice person.
So yeah,
Look, I can throw this forward, actually very much backwards. When I was about 12 years old, my
well,
parents,
so like 1912.
yeah, it's just 3 years ago. My parents actually asked me the same question, well, effectively, right? About if I had a piece of real estate and that if somebody of this, how was it put? Anyway, basically, if I had two offers and one was substantially higher, but there was an ethical reason why I wouldn't sell to that higher bid, what would you do? And I said, no, I would sell it to the cheaper price. And then my mum said, okay, what if there was 20% difference? So first she said, what if there was 10%? And I said, no, I wouldn't do it. And then she said, what if it was 20%? And I said, yeah, I'd do it for 20%. So I just realized, and I found my price. It's a 12-year-old, right? But and that is frightening. We've got
Everyone's got a price.
We've all got a price.
Anyone that says they don't is like,
No, I know.
they're lying to themselves.
I know. And I mean, look, again, in one hand, you want to really defend free enterprise, but the other side, there are a lot of negatives.
Let
there.
me throw another question out to you. So let's say this situation with the farmers, right? And you're saying like, Coles and Woolworths and all that is acting unethical.
Mm-hmm.
So is it the system's fault for allowing that behavior or is it the real estate and the person's fault? Because if that person goes for the higher price,
Mm-hmm.
right, there's a flow-on effect from there. But the thing is, that's one transaction we're looking at. How many transactions on a daily basis around the world are going on because of things like that?
Sure.
So should we be angry at the system for allowing that transaction to happen multiple times, or should we be angry about that one situation?
Well, okay, you should be angry at the system, but the
Spot
problem
on.
is
So
that
it's the
every
system
single
is the
day,
cause.
every single day, people go and vote for people who oppress them,
Yep.
right? And so, therefore, where does the responsibility stop? Does it fall back on the voter who goes and goes, "Oh, the Labor's doing a great job"?
So how
it's
come? So
ridiculous.
again, this is why I'm a firm believer of the why is more important than the what. So why is that voter going and has no idea about the political system?
Well, it's not educated.
It's not in the education systems. Now, who sets the curriculum for the education system?
Government.
Politicians.
Well, It's interesting in this space. If I can change topics, tack
Yes, absolutely.
a little bit. And Dan, this will interest you, that Donald Trump has come out and said that he will or is willing to escalate the US-China trade war. Now, I've got to watch the word escalate because, of course, I'm reading this off a left-wing media corporation who's reporting on this.
What is it, Fox?
No, I'm not going to say who it is. But that's if he's elected in the office again in November, that he's saying that they will raise tariffs against China by 60%, theoretically. I like this. I actually wonder if Trump is actually throwing out the word 60%, knowing that he's actually probably happy with 50%. So he's got some wriggle room to negotiate there because he's the art of negotiator there. But he says he might even go higher. Maybe it's going to go more than that. And he's wanting to do a blanket 10% tariff on all US imports. Now, the left is saying this is going to hurt consumers. I remember the discussion we had a few weeks ago where we were talking about Japan biting the bullet in a deflationary period.
Yes. And the Band-Aid off.
Yeah, and it hurt. But really, for the future of the United States, they've got to get back to manufacturing their own products.
No doubt about it.
They're going to prosper 20 years.
And this is the Band-Aid. This is the way it's got to be ripped off.
I'd like your input on that, Dan. What are your thoughts on that? What has America got to do to get jobs back on their homeland?
Well, there has to be a disincentive for U.S. companies to take their business overseas. Number one, there've got to be incentives for them to employ people in the United States and do their business in the United States. Number two, China, we know, and many other countries do price supports for many of their goods in terms of allowing them to be able to sell them cheaper, and it's anti-competitive and destroys American business. And so you're right, the tariffs are a good idea. Does it hurt the consumer? Well, ultimately, it's a question of wage versus cost, right? And the balance of the economy, and a healthy economy, a robust economy is always better for everyone than a weak economy. Right now, we have a weak economy because, except for the military sector, cranking all these arms at inflationary rates and everything. But people are hurting. They can't afford their groceries. Everything's lopsided, and this is all done intentionally by the Biden administration to create a dynamic welfare state. And then they're flooding the borders with all these illegal aliens and giving them stipends that the American people who pay taxes are paying for out of their pocket. And it is just an absolute shame, an embarrassment, and wrong that the Democrats are using the political system to support future voters and others, forgiving student loans and other things. My God, I took a student loan out to go to law school and stuff. I paid it back. Do I get a rebate because now they're deciding I didn't have to pay it back? I mean, it's just ridiculous. I mean, when you take out a loan, you've got to pay the damn thing back. It's just the way life works. And by making it so you don't have to, sends the wrong message, right? Because it's enabling irresponsible behavior, right? So, I mean, and a lot of these people that are getting the loans forgiven can afford to pay their damn loans. They just chose not to because they're getting deferrals and everything else. There's all kinds of issues in the United States that with the socialist agenda pushed by Biden and his administration is just absolutely gutting the free enterprise system and taking the incentives away to work hard and do the right thing, right?
So I think something else to add on to that one, I think there's a lot that the government can do. I'm going to use Australia as an example. If you've got a business that's starting to get to a certain size, you go start paying, not only you've got all the other expenses, but you've got a big one called payroll tax. So for every single person you have on your roster, you pay an additional tax. My understanding, America has something similar to that as well for the corporations where the small businesses don't really have them. Okay. I think a lot of that sort of crap needs to go. Because if you remove that, the government's going to earn less money, but straight away they can start hiring more people.
Of course.
And then more people have jobs, and it's easier. So you've got to have the carrot and the stick, like Dan put out. So making it easier to put people on, making it easier to hire people at a reasonable rate is really important. And when you start adding public liability insurance into that, the payroll tax, income tax, I don't know if America has superannuation like we do over here, but when you add the superannuation on top of it, not everything else, it just gets too expensive to actually hire people. Because we looked at it while the ones in Vietnam, we were actually going to hire.
But United States doesn't want full employment.
Yeah.
Because the United States doesn't feel full employment is good for the economy.
That's bullshit.
Yeah, I know. But they always want an unemployment rate that's low enough to keep themselves, get them reelected, but not high enough to create pressures on the business structures. So there's a balancing act that the Fed plays in monetary policy, interest rates, other things to promote and or to decelerate job growth in the United States. What people are not understanding is the jobs in the United States now, many of them are, people are working 2 and 3 jobs because they can't afford to live. And so the employment numbers are actually skewed and wrong. I mean, they're false. Biden administration has deliberately skewed the employment numbers to make them look good, when in reality, the employment, other than the tech sector, it sucks. And even the tech sector has been laying off massive numbers. Google laid off, Facebook laid off, others, Netflix, others have laid off.
Gowan was doing that in WA as well. So I don't know how they do it in America, but in Australia, if you're not actively looking for a job, you don't show up on the unemployment rates. So if you're a stay-at-home parent, a student, you don't show up on the figures. There was prior to COVID, we had a participation rate of about 85%.
Okay.
So after COVID, it dropped all the way down to 75%. I think at one point it was like below 70%. So those figures don't show up on unemployment figures.
Right.
So we had an unemployment rate of 3%, which is like astronomically low, but the participation rate was really poor. So
many people are not working anymore.
Well, they don't want to. They get more money on welfare than what they do.
Spot on. I mean, every time we look for staff, full stop, we have trouble. We are not getting people who want to work.
Because we can't pay enough.
Well, that's
there's more money on welfare
yeah.
than what it is not.
Dan, what's the sentiment around China in the United States? What are people saying? Because Trump claims he's got a great relationship with President Xi Jinping, despite the tariff war that went on.
All right. So China respects strength through power. So does North Korea. So does any other leader on either side of the free world or otherwise, right? The Trump's a strong leader. Biden is a piece of wuss butt, and it doesn't. And he projects weakness, and China knows that. That's why they got him in, right? Because they wanted to manipulate and play all these games and everything else. Trump is strong. And so he doesn't have a good relationship with the Chinese, whatever they're calling him now, but he does respect Trump and fears him. As the same with North Korean president, fat roll boy, whatever his name was, but the Pillsbury Doughboy, he fears him. But he trusts him because he knows that he will keep his word. And I think Ping does too, thinks he'll keep his word. You can't trust Biden for anything because he's never kept his word and he's always lying. So
I actually want to throw forward something that I've been seeing over the mainstream media in the last 2 days is this promotion of the fact that, because they're genuinely worried that Trump's going to win, right?
I hope he does.
So, but they're pushing forward right now this whole narrative that he is a warmonger and that he has bad relationships with all of these other countries. And
I love that. I love that.
It's a
Sorry,
complete
can I answer
flip.
this one?
Please.
You know the biggest difference I noticed about Biden and Trump?
What's
Under Biden, America was going to war. Under Trump was stopping wars.
Spot on.
So even going back even further, Obama, the whole 8 years he was in authority, he was always at war.
Yeah.
Now, my ex-wife was Chinese, so I've had a bit to deal with a few Chinese business people. I know to stay away from it, like the plague, because it's just wrong. So what will happen? Let's say Trump does win. They will negotiate. They'll do all that sort of stuff. But what China's don't do is they go, yeah, we'll just write off the next 4 years. They plan generations ahead. They don't plan 3 years, 4 years, 5 years. They're generations ahead. They go, like, no worries, we'll just delay everything for 4 years. We'll just cruise along. We'll just stagnate for a bit. Once the big scary orange man is gone, we'll get some Limp Bizkit person again.
Well,
Yeah.
plus they own a lot of the American politicians already. McConnell, it's not like it's that China doesn't have influence in the United States in its seats of power. They do, because they own people. I mean, Biden isn't the only person they bribed, right? Yeah, it's other politicians. I won't even get into the security agencies and all the corruption that goes on there in the United
How much
States.
justice can you buy? Yep.
Well, it's not just the Democrats that went to war. During the Bush era, they went to Iraq, and I think it's probably because they come from the same school, whether they're Republican or Democrat.
Well, but Bush is a globalist. Remember, the Bushes were globalists.
Yeah.
So
And
it's
you
whether
gotta
they're
remember
globalists or not.
Trump is not from that same breed. He is, I want to do the right thing by the United States. He's not
the American
he's a
people.
businessman. He's not a politician.
Yeah.
He wants to get the job done, and let's do it effectively. And I think that's where we've got to understand they're not from the whole the same school.
Taking Trump out of the whole picture here, I look at American politics and I genuinely look back and I think to myself, the last president, in my eyes, and look, I'm an Australian looking in, right? But in my eyes, the last president who actually cared about the American people,
Jimmy Carter.
I'm going to say is
Carter.
Reagan. Absolutely Reagan. To my mind, that's what I can see.
Yeah.
The rest have been all about self-interest. That's it. And obviously,
Yeah, but even Reagan was manipulated. That's
of
the
course,
problem.
they would have to be.
Yeah, he was manipulated. Yeah.
So I still think even if Trump does get in, I think China will just all not go into hibernation, but they'll still negotiate. They'll still do what they're doing, but they know they won't win every battle, but they will with
I think
Biden.
China is not as strong as it would like to portray economically. I
No,
think
it's got problems right now. Seriously.
They've
their
got
building industry and banking industry
big
is in.
problem. The whole Evergrande thing is biting them. That whole property deal that has gone bankrupt. They've got cities that
Completed cities with nothing in there.
Well, there's vacancies.
Yeah. So-
Look, we've got a
So I
couple
still
of
think
minutes
India.
left. We're going to need to wind the show up. So I think that, look, I'll throw it to Derek. If we've got any subjects we'd like to hit on the way through.
Well, I think it's interesting to see the similarities that are happening internationally, also in Australia. I think Australia is a bit more subtle in the way it deals with this sort of thing in terms of international borders being infiltrated. We've heard, of course, Dan talking about the problems in the United States, and we've seen the stuff that's going on in Texas at the moment. And a lot of that migration seems to be appearing to, hitting California and Arizona now. They just go through a different route. But Australia's got a different way. Being an island, we've looked at it and gone, well, hey, we'll let our international students now stay and apply for citizenship after. That's
Why?
come out during the week. Well,
Why? Yeah.
exactly. Labor is steamrolling the international student visa rule, which automatically bars incomers who want to settle in Australia permanently. And so, if you study here, they're kind of saying, "Hey, well, you're gonna have another opportunity to live here." And what you've got to look at then is who are the genuine students that are coming into the country, right? Because basically, education's been a very profitable business for Australia up till now, right?
Certainly has been.
And then COVID
Well,
kind of shut down.
There's
a
an
lot of
argument for that if they're adding to the brain trust of Australia and improving the country. And they're not giving jobs away from regular Australians, right? So if it's a net positive for the country, I can see it. But that's not going to be every case.
My concern, Dan, is that what they do to those young people's minds on those university campuses is
I know.
actually throw in a left-wing political agenda that condemns them for either being male, Christian, or disagreeing with any of these woke views, and then you're letting that perception of our nation come in. So, yep, welcome. We're just easy coming to our borders.
Well, clean out the professorships and others, and the left woke people that can't work anywhere else. Send them to China where they belong.
Yeah. So
look, I wouldn't want to. I would not want my children going to university. It's as simple as that. I understand now.
I'll send them in a different country.
Yeah, well, if you want to go, if they need to learn skills to become, I don't know, a doctor, or this, that, whatever. Well, you need that particular expertise. I completely understand it.
Send them to Vietnam.
Perhaps that's the idea, but I'm telling you right now, I wouldn't want to send my children to what I consider to be an indoctrination camp.
Yep.
And that's what it is now.
I've seen the curriculum in Vietnam, and I have to say I haven't seen anything like it. There's no what I call social sciences in there at all. It just does not exist. It's very
Just the facts, man.
mass Vietnamese, even uni students learn English now in Vietnam.
Okay,
But it's just the hard facts. If you can't prove it, it's not in the university.
gotcha.
So it was very, very enlightening, and that's why the kids are over there at the moment for
All
3
right.
months.
Gentlemen, time to tie up the show. Last thoughts here, Derek.
I was just going to say, in context with that international intake, is also the migration level of what this current government is doing. Over 500,000. We don't have the infrastructure to house all these people.
Yeah.
It's just
And
crazy.
solutions.
And like I will keep saying on this show time after time, I just want to know why right now in Western Australia there's 10,000 Afghani immigrants, predominantly men of fighting age, that have come into this country when we have a housing crisis and absolutely no need for them, and people who don't want to assimilate or don't want to actually add value to this country. Please explain that to me.
And instead of helping out the people that are homeless, all the funds are going to the migrants.
Spot on.
Right.
And I can talk about that on a personal level, but I shan't. We will move on. Now, we've got another show coming up in just a few minutes.
Final
which
words
is
from Dan?
fantastic. I'd love to hear Dan's final thoughts on this. Dan?
No, I've already expressed my views on it. Governments have to defend their borders. They have
no
to.
question.
They have to defend the quality and that citizenship in a country means something. It's identified with a bundle of rights that citizens deserve, and the non-citizens don't, unless they earn their citizenship through the regular legal processes. If they're there illegally, they shouldn't have any rights. They shouldn't have any ability to be interacting with all the social benefit system or anything else. If they're there illegally, they should be sent back to their country unless they're being persecuted and they've been granted asylum. But those are the only cases. That's not what's happening now. It's not. I mean, they've tried to turn the economic issue into a argument for amnesty, but it's not an argument. I mean, crap happens everywhere, all over the world. We have poor people in the United States that the government isn't supporting. I mean, we have the same problem in every country, like you guys have mentioned. The government of the United States owes a duty to its citizens. It does not owe a duty to people who are here illegally or here under suspicious circumstances. They're going out and beating up cops in the street in New York City. My gosh, they're creating a bigger social problem for America, and that's wrong. It's just absolutely wrong. The regular citizen of the United States should not be, not put up with for even a second.
And that's why we're here at Edge Radio Australia as a voice for the everyday person, whether they be Australian, American, Norwegian, French, wherever you happen to come from. We want to be that voice because, let's face it, the corporate media is keeping the information away and keeping your voices down, and we would like you to be heard. That's the end of the show. Thank you very much, Pod TV, for everything, for your association, for distribution, and all the other wonderful shows that you do. And as I say, from ourselves here, Freedom Fridays at Edge Radio Australia, thank you very much, and goodbye.
Thank you. Take care.